All right, so I would say we should start. People are probably going to come in anyways. Okay, so GM everybody. This is the second Glassy Hour, and I'm Yusuf. I'm your host. And if you don't already know, Glassy Hours are bi-weekly online sessions in which we cover any topic around Solana development. And today we got Nick, and he is the founder and CEO at Clockwork. And he will hold a little workshop on Clockwork and how we can make use of it. And just for knowledge, this session doesn't require any knowledge, and you're all welcome. So I'd just like to hand it over to Nick without much further talk. And yeah, let's just get started.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Yusuf. It's great to be here. Let me figure out if I can share my screen real fast.
Sure.
A few slides.
All right. Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. Cool. Looks good. And you're able to see this running like clockwork slide?
Oh, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, jam everyone. My name is Nick. I'm founder and CEO of Clockwork. And yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about blockchain automation with Clockwork. So yeah, just diving in a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer by training, have probably a little over like 11 years or so of just building applications and backend systems. I, in a prior life, used to work on the payments team at Uber for about 4 years, helping build out the payroll system there that pays all the drivers. And there got a lot of like firsthand experience with this like arcane banking technology that we all use in our daily lives, and just came to see like, yeah, basically just how like slow and old those systems are. And that really, I think, is what like primed me for diving into crypto. But actually at the time, like just a little background story, I was a big crypto skeptic for a very long time. And it never made much sense to me because like coming from that banking world of like, working kind of high volume payments and like working like one of the largest payroll systems in the world, it never made sense to us why we would say use a payments network like Ethereum or Bitcoin to send like $20 to a driver when the fees could be anywhere from like $5 to $10 and the settlement times were like, kind of unpredictable, on the order of anywhere from 5 to 60 minutes. And so I was a crypto skeptic for a very long time until a friend of mine in early Feb 2021 showed me this system called Solana. And Solana really just caught my eye because I was kind of coming at it from that payments lens of like, this thing is super fast, transactions are cheap, and it's actually competitive with like, any of the existing payment rails in the world, whether it's like ACH or wires or cash or so on. And there's an extra appeal to the fact that it was open source and kind of run on this like decentralized network of nodes. And so that was really how crypto, I guess, caught my attention and how I first started kind of dabbling and diving in. And so when I got like interested in Solana and began diving in, like my head immediately went to, well, we should build a payroll system on this thing. Because they're just coming from that payments world, and it seemed to make sense to me that there was this new payment rails that was cheaper and faster than anything that existed. But almost as soon as we started kind of building that system, we began to run into this more fundamental problem around like, how do we actually schedule a token transfer to happen? Because for a payroll system, we would want these token transfers to happen perhaps every week, maybe every day, maybe every month, depending on whatever the employer had set up the schedule to be. And there wasn't a good system for scheduling token transfers. There was like no on-chain timer, if you will, no decentralized timer that we could rely on. And the only system that made any sense to us or that really worked was we would spin up a bot in say AWS or GCP and code that server to submit transactions to the chain on, as part of the system. And we didn't really like that solution because obviously we had wanted this whole thing just to be a smart contract platform that anyone could use. And it felt a little odd to us that, our smart contract platform would be entirely dependent on this kind of off-chain centralized transaction scheduler, such that if that scheduler went down, say the company went out of business or something, it kind of like nullifies the point of the smart contracts. And some of the smart contracts would become unusable if that off-chain server went down. And so we weren't too happy with that solution, and we at the time were talking with a lot of friends in the ecosystem and realized that they had similar kind of scheduling automation problems with their smart contracts, and that was what really got us thinking that perhaps there's some more generalized solution here, or a need for the ecosystem. And so that was where we set out in, I'd say, like late summer of 2021 slash like Feb 2022, was to build this more generalized automation solution that we called Kronos at the time. And we were at Mountain DAO the first Mountain DAO in Feb 2022, where we built the very first kind of Kronos cron scheduling system on Solana, and then we submitted that as part of the Riptide hackathon, and ended up, to our surprise, kind of coming in first place. And since then, have just been committed full time towards building the system out and making it work for the entire Solana ecosystem, as well as expanding on the use cases. So beyond cron, it's like what other types of automations that smart contracts need. And so we obviously renamed since then. Turns out kind of that Kronos is a very popular startup name. There are quite a few other startups, and even within the crypto ecosystem that use the name Kronos. And so we ended up changing our name to Clockwork, and shipped the mainnet by October of last year, just before breakpoints in 2022, and have been live for a few months now. And so diving into it, Clockwork, we like to describe it as an automation engine for Solana. And what that means in short is that you can use Clockwork to schedule transactions and build automated event-driven smart contracts that don't rely on any sort of centralized off-chain infrastructure. So if you want to run some automated process on chain in your smart contract, you don't need to build a bot off-chain and maintain that bot in order for that process to actually run. We provide an SDK that you can integrate into your smart contracts that allows you to build kind of asynchronous smart contracts and set up rules for when you want your smart contracts to run, and sort of defines the rules around how you want your smart contract to operate. And so to dive into that a little bit, to peel under the hood a bit, the main primitive that we provide for that automation service, we call threads. And if you're a software developer, you're likely already familiar with threads. In traditional computing, a thread is what an application uses to execute a series of instructions on a computer. And in this context, the Clockwork threads are what smart contracts can use to execute a dynamic series of instructions on Solana. And so you can think of it as, your smart contract is spinning up a transaction thread in the background to execute some logic or some process. And so kind of the simplest kind of mental model for threads here is that there are two main components to them. The first is a trigger, where you define your triggering condition that you want to kick off the thread. And we have a number of trigger conditions supported today, including an account trigger condition. So if you want to, say, monitor some particular piece of state, you can point to your thread at a particular account, say a token account, and if that balance changes, you could say, oh, I want to fire off this process. We additionally have the cron trigger type, which is where we originally started, where you can define a schedule, either one time or recurring. So say around like every Tuesday or every first Tuesday of the month, or every other month on like the third Wednesday, or something, however kind of arbitrarily complex you want to get. There's an epoch trigger that kicks off based on Solana epochs. A slot trigger, which is very similar, just kicks off on the slot number. A timestamp trigger, which is kind of like a simplified cron, where you can just specify a Unix timestamp that you want to be the gating condition for your logic. And then most recently, just about a week ago, we rolled out a pith trigger, where you can set up a thread that monitors an actual price feed on chain, and then you can set up, say, limit conditions for if the Sol USDC price goes above X dollars, then I want to run, or if it goes below $15, then I want to run. And so yeah, there's a trigger condition for threads, and then the other kind of thing you set up is the action, or what we call the instructions. And the actions here, they can either be a static list of instructions if you know exactly what you want to run ahead of time. So say, you know all the accounts that you want, the data, exactly what program you want to call. You can define a static, set of instructions. But alternatively, what we see a lot of developers use are dynamic instructions, where you don't necessarily know ahead of time what accounts you want to call, or what data you want to call your instructions with. And so you can we provide a method for computing that on the fly. And we have some example programs on GitHub that kind of walk through how to use those dynamic and static instructions. But the takeaway here is just that a thread automation primitive for Solana developers, and it breaks down into two main components. You just have to define your trigger condition and your instructions that you want to run. And then what happens behind the scenes is that Clockwork, we work together with a lot of like a number of Solana RPC node operators and validator operators, and they install this open source plugin that we build onto their machines, and they'll see these threads get created. And when the trigger condition is met on the threads, they'll go ahead and submit transactions to the chain on your program's behalf. And so they kind of, the node operators in that case, the Solana node operators, they are the bots, if you will. So instead of you having to write your own bot and run it in AWS, you can just rely on the Solana network itself, the same node operators that we rely on to validate our transactions. You can rely on them to actually submit scheduled transactions on your behalf. And so if you are a node operator or you run a validator and you're interested in earning, augmenting your fees, this service obviously charges a small fee that gets paid through to the node operators to incentivize them for doing that work. And so you can install that plugin on your machine, and we're happy to sit down and help you set that up. But the big kind of high level message here, so without getting too deep into the code, is just that Clockwork threads help bring smart contracts to life and can make them run. And we really kind of believe in this vision of the world computer, that we can rely on, shared computer that anyone can use, anyone can deploy programs to, anyone can write data to, anyone can read data from. And we believe that those programs that we ship to that world computer, they should be able to operate and just run independently in the background, such that they don't require humans off chain to prod and poke them in order to actually do stuff, but they can have a life of their own. And Clockwork helps bring those smart contracts to life. And that really is kind of the big idea here. So to get a bit more concrete, I want to talk a little bit about use cases and what we've seen developers build, and some example programs we built ourselves. So obviously, this can all be quite abstract. So we want to dive into like, what are people using this for? And the first use case here is just like, obviously we have that pit trigger, and we have an account-based triggers for if you want to monitor a particular incoming Oracle data feed, and then trigger actions based off of that. So, you could use either of those triggers to say, calculate stats, like on-chain stats or derivative statistics from an Oracle data feed, whether that's like a moving average or a volatility index or some other, calculation. You can build programs that monitor those Oracle feeds and then, calculate whatever sort of signal indicators that you need. And then likewise, you can take that a step further and say execute trades based off of those price feeds and technical indicators. So if you want to set up some particular, like take profit or stop loss order, you could set that up with a Clockwork pit trigger and say be monitoring the Sol USDC price feed and then execute the trade on let's say Orca or OpenBook or Radium or whichever DEX you want to use. Other use cases we've seen. So there's DeFi. Obviously, we have like a few different like borrow lend pools on Solana. I think at the time we made these slides, Solana and Jet were the big ones. I think today MarginFi is probably the biggest one. So one thing you can do is like automatically what we call DeFi protection. So like you're monitoring that pit price feed, you can automatically repay your debt on a borrow lend pool when your say collateral prices are approaching some liquidation level. And so that's where you can like avoid liquidation ahead of time because you have this automation that's running in the background, kind of protecting your position. And likewise, you might be able to get even more aggressive here. And let's say you're monitoring the like USDC pool and the USDT pool, and you can monitor the relative yield rates. And if the yield rate on USDC is above USDT, you could say move collateral from USDT into a USDC pool, and vice versa if the relative yield rate is higher on the other side. So there's all sorts of different kind of DeFi use cases here. Yeah, I'd say what we're seeing most recently is basically using the pit triggers to execute trades and build on-chain trading strategies, which is quite exciting because it allows you to basically deploy a smart contract to define your rules, and you get the benefit of the Clockwork worker network, which largely is a network of validators and RPC nodes that have say stake, and so their transactions can be prioritized. You don't have to compete through say the public ports to get your transactions landed, and you can actually see much higher performance out there, as well as avoid like spamming transactions. There's obviously payments. So there's a few different companies doing payments. I think we need to update the Sphere logo here. These slides are a bit dated. But yeah, like kind of going back to where it started with the payroll system, it's like simply just automating on-chain token transfers or subscription payments. And actually one we don't have on here, but we've since launched is an integration with Helium. So Helium, is, some people in this call may know, is a distributed wireless network where people can set up hotspots to provide wireless coverage to consumers in their area, and you can earn rewards for running those hotspots. And so Helium recently migrated away from their own L1 to Solana, and they had to build this system to automate the minting and distribution of those rewards. And so they used Clockwork to do that. And basically once a day, they fire off all these threads that take care of calculating the utility scores for all of those hotspot operators, and then minting and actually sending the tokens out to those node operators. And it's basically a simple thread in their contracts. Yeah, and then this last use case here is just like all of this works through basic authority delegation. So if you want to say secure your threads by a multisig, you can obviously use squads to do that. And you could say do this to like automatically claim or roll over like stake pools if you manage stake through a squad multisig, like validator stake. But one slide we actually don't have in this presentation that I actually wanted to share as well is what we're kind of seeing some developers play around with more that we hadn't anticipated at first is our dynamic NFTs. And we're actually quite excited about this. The first project that it's maybe a little bit of alpha here, but it's only a few people on this call, so I don't think I'll get in too much trouble, is Klanosaurus is going to launch a dynamic NFT that basically it's like a pterodactyl that flies for like 12 hours a day and then switches to fly for 12 hours at night. And so we think like that is just like kind of the first like proof of concept that we're seeing for these dynamic NFTs, where you can say update metadata, like NFT metadata, when either like based on time changes. So you can say update metadata like every minute, every 30 minutes, every 12 hours, whatever you want to set that schedule to. You can set up metadata to change whenever the owner of a token changes. So let's say it's like a, your dinosaur gets sad whenever it's sold and then grows happier the longer it's held. You could use a Clockwork thread in the background to automate those metadata changes. One integration we're kind of working on with the team at the moment, who I will have to leave unnamed, is an integration for like a diamond hands property. So when the NFT is held for 30 days or more, you can add updates the NFT property list with like a new kind of diamond hands property, where like the artwork is a little bit more upgraded. And if that NFT is sold or listed, then you obviously like lose that property automatically. And so I think there's like a lot of kind of creative design space when it comes to dynamic NFTs. And yeah, one thing we're working on right now is just provide more open source tooling in that regard, more example programs that we will be releasing over like the coming week or two. That yeah, we hope you all can start using to build like really cool and interesting dynamic NFTs. And so with that, you can maybe touch a second on the fee structure. And so the main takeaway from this slide with all those zeros is just that this is a very small fee, kind of an additional fee that's tacked on to the base transaction fee. And so Clockwork currently charges 1,000 LAMP ports per instruction. And that, if you're a developer, you may be familiar, that's the Solana base fee is 5,000 LAMP ports per transaction. So if you have a thread that is, say, scheduled to fire once every 10 minutes, that means you'll be submitting a transaction with one instruction every 10 minutes. So you'll pay that base fee of 5,000 LAMP ports plus an additional 1,000 LAMP ports of, so essentially 6,000 LAMP ports every 10 minutes. And this is like a very small fee, like just a marginal kind of bump on top of the transactions that you'd already be submitting. And then the whole point of this fee is just that it goes through to the worker network to incentivize them for actually submitting the transactions on your behalf. So for like Solana node operators, this is can be a boost to your yield. So in addition to the staking yields that you earn for validating transactions and voting, you can earn this additional automation fee for cranking Clockwork threads. And then, yeah, just last slide here is that all of this is 100% open source. So all the programs are open source on GitHub. The Clockwork plugin is open source on GitHub. And we provide a number of example programs example integrations on GitHub that are free to fork and kind of integrates into your own contracts and products. And well, at the time this slide was created, the contracts were under audit by OtterSec. That audit has not been released. You can find that audit on GitHub. And yeah, I mean, live on mainnet today. I don't think there's any other slides here, but we are, if you want to learn more, we have a website at clockwork.xyz. And there you can find a link to our docs that has more like in-depth descriptions if you want to really dive into the details. And if you have any questions, you can find our Discord there as well. And you feel free to just jump in and throw any questions our way in the either like the general or developer channel, and someone from the team will be there to respond and help you out. And so with that, I feel like we probably open it up to Q&A if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So I saw that Chris had a question.
Yeah.
Chris, you wanna?
Yeah, I'll jump on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so are your products are mostly like back-end and developer oriented. Are you planning anything on like the customer, like the end user facing side of just like clickety click and you're able to automate something?
Yeah. We are working on a product right now that we call Defrost. And so the way we think about that is like, we have two things. One is for developers. Let me share my screen again, actually, so we can, I guess, all see the same thing here. For developers, we have this front end tool, just at app.clockwork.xyz. And this is basically a debugging tool. So when you're building threads, in order to kind of debug, like figure out what's going wrong, something running, is it not running, and get the transaction history. So you can see here we have just a pretty simple hello world thread that someone spun up, and we can get a link to the transaction and Solana Explorer and figure out kind of what's going on here. This is the current kind of like Clockwork front end product that we offer. And we have a few plans and ideas for how to expand on this. But we're additionally thinking, for kind of consumer facing applications, we've had quite a few ideas for things that, we'd hope developers would build, but like the Solana ecosystem is obviously quite small. So, and we have time on our hands. So we're just gonna kind of build a few products ourselves that we're interested in. And the first one that we're working on right now is one we call Defrost. And it's basically a way to automate spending allowances from your cold storage wallets to hot wallets. And so you can come in, you can set up balances and schedules for like maintain a spending balance of say like 100 USDC every week or so. And it's just a simple, like very simple Clockwork contract that kind of like monitor your hot wallet balance. If it falls below 100 USDC, this will automate a transfer from your cold storage wallet. And that will be like the first kind of mini product that we launch. We have a few other ideas. And so we'll probably, I think, build out like maybe 2 or 3 other little like utility tools that's over the course of the year, just to help like folks rock and understand like what they can do with smart contract automation.
So I can just keep spending and it will just keep sending me money. That sounds like a really good thing and a really bad thing at the same time, because I'll just keep spending money. I'll just ape, but cheers. Yeah, makes sense. Defrost sounds really cool, actually.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, very nice. Are there any other questions? Okay, so yeah, it looks like we don't have any other questions. Yeah, then thank you, Nick. That was a very cool presentation. Definitely learned a whole lot of stuff. If we don't have any more questions, then I'll just relieve you. I'll just let you go. And I would also send in your Twitter. So everyone can go and follow you over there to keep or stay updated. And
yeah, let me share. Yeah, I can share a link to the Discord as well. If anyone has kind of any follow-up questions, feel free to throw this in the Clockwork Discord, and some member of the team will be there to help out. Yeah, I mean, super excited to see what you guys build. There's a lot of our goal with Clockwork is just to open up the design space for contract developers and get more interesting kind of contracts, whether it's on-chain games or like utility applications, automating DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. So we've heard a lot of ideas, and yeah, just want to help developers build. So yeah, if you need any help, feel free to ping us in Discord, and we're always around.
Okay, very cool. So, right then, see you all in 2 weeks, and yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Ciao,
Have a good
ciao.
one.
Thanks for being.